Okay, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Um, I'm here with my former friend, Fatma here. And Fatma recently just gave a TED Talk, and I thought it would be a great idea for us to actually interview her to get firsthand insight into how TED Talks are given, wh- what to do, what not to do, what to expect, how to manage time, how to engage the audience, all those questions. And a brief introduction of Fatma is that she is a business woman who has been running a very successful business for the past decade or so, a little bit more than that. And the services that she offers or her business offers are career development, writing, professional writing, and all those things. And Fatma is currently in the US, in California, where she is also pursuing higher education. So that's enough about our host, oh, sorry, our guest today. But okay, let's just jump into it then. Hey, Fatma, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great, 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 great. Okay, so let me start off with my first question.
Mhm.
Um, and let's start from the fundamentals of basics. Why TED Talks? Why do we need them? What is the utility of these?
Well, I believe their mission is to it's like ideas that change something. I think that's something like that, right? Let me look it up real quick.
Ideas that
It's
change the world, I think.
something like that, yeah. TED Talks. Ideas worth spreading. So
Okay.
it's
Got it.
really interesting. I actually I'm still going to school, so I actually watch TED Talks for class. Like I had to
Mhm,
watch a TED Talk for my primate anthropology class where the gentleman was giving a talk on alpha male behavior in
mhm,
different primate species. So it's not like, oh, it has to be like some kind of motivational,
mhm.
you know, you know, like keynote speech type thing. No,
Right.
you could literally write a speech about your subject matter, and
Mhm,
if you think it's interesting and if you think people should know about it, like I think alpha male behavior is something really interesting because he was comparing our use of the word alpha male to how scientists use it and to describe like primate behavior, and it was like, oh, okay, so we're actually not using it like scientifically.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
That was really cool and interesting.
Okay, so basically, TED Talks cover a lot of topics and issues,
Yeah.
ranging from purely academic to issues or topics of general interest. So it's like spreading knowledge, making it accessible to a larger group of people, and also sometimes dumbing down knowledge so that everybody could really know what's going on really. Um, my second question would be, what makes a TED Talk different from a regular presentation that you would give?
So I think they have specific rules about what makes a TED Talk. Like if you look at their website, so if I literally Google what makes a TED Talk, I think they definitely have rules about time limits. Like when I was speaking, I had a dress rehearsal and then my speech ended up being like 18 minutes and 30 seconds or something. And they were like, you need to get it under 18. We could still record it and we'll put it up on our website. I spoke at Purdue University.
Mhm,
However, TED isn't going to publish this unless it comes within the 18-minute mark.
mhm,
Um, let's see. So yeah, I think that's like the only rule.
mhm.
But in terms of like what makes a good TED Talk, there's like a few formulas that you can
Right.
kind of trickle into your speech.
Okay. Okay. And all right. So, how important is the element of storytelling in delivering a TED Talk, and does that make it a bit different from regular presentations?
I would say that no matter what kind of presentation you're giving, you should do storytelling. Like, I wouldn't say a speech is a speech without a story,
Mhm.
honestly speaking. I mean, I use the word story very loosely. A story doesn't have to be like, when I was a child, I was
Yeah.
robbed at gunpoint and I became Batman. Like, that doesn't have to be your story. It could be something, for example, in the primate anthropology lecture that I watched on TEDx, he used storytelling with imagery. Like he was
Mhm.
saying, oh, alpha males are seen as somebody who's going to keep the peace. And then there was like a picture of different presidents in the background. So there was like Obama shaking, what Margaret, whatever her name, German lady. Sorry, really, really dumb.
Angela
Um,
Merkel.
huh? What's her name?
Angela Merkel.
Yeah. What did I say?
You said something, Margaret Thatcher. You were thinking about the former UK Prime Minister. Yeah.
This is why I'm back in school to cure my stupidity.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was like an element of storytelling where you're using imagery to show that these are people who are seen as alpha males, and it wasn't just males. Like he would the speaker was also using pictures of Hillary Clinton. And so it was like a very interesting way to showcase this phenomenon in our society that has become ubiquitous with being like this toxic masculine, kind of guy. When that he was trying to say like that's not what that is. It's
Mhm.
something else. So that was like an element of storytelling. What I just did right now, oh, I'm back in school because I'm an idiot. That's also an element of storytelling. This is supposed to be like a professional presentation, Hasham. Please, but
There we go. Yeah.
we gotta use storytelling to keep audience interest. So
Sure.
that's what. So I think even if you're giving like the driest lecture on organic chemistry, there should be some element of storytelling. For example, you can say, well, this chemical, it is it is used in this and this. Like these are the applications, and that's a form of storytelling because it keeps the audience engaged.
Okay. As interesting as primate anthropology is, let's talk about your TED Talk specifically. So
Mhm.
let me start by asking you, how did you come up with the topic for your TED Talk?
I think it was something that I kind of always said, you know what I mean? Like it's not something that people who are close to me like haven't heard.
Hmm.
Um the key theme is to not consider yourself a failure if you've had some kind of setback in your career, whether you've dropped out of school or you had to take a very menial kind of job to pay the bills, or like the example that I used in the speech was of Maya Angelou, and she had a child when she was 17.
Hmm.
And most people would say, well, that's a failure, like your life is done. Ab
Hmm.
maa ban ke baithe raho, but she was like, "No, I'm gonna change the world of literature." So that was the kind of the point. I also pulled examples from like my own story of, moments when I felt like a total failure, negative feedback that I got from my colleagues. Um, I talked about going back in school and feeling dumber than everyone else, being in my 30s and then being recently diagnosed with ADHD and kind of navigating that. So yeah, it's something that I have always seen, like just being in this space, in the career coaching space, I have always seen people have what we what recruiters might call like red flags, like, oh, you took off a year. Why were you fired? Oh, why are you changing career paths? These things that we scrutinize as making you less than desirable in terms of like, a career professional, it's not that bad. I feel like most of the time it's just us kind of overthinking things. So that's kind of what the speech was about. And it was about the power of like
Hmm.
making your opportunity happen anyway.
Right. And you delivered the TED Talk at Purdue University. So
I
you
did,
had
yeah.
a live audience in front of you.
I did.
And then it was also published on the TED website where it is accessible. And I will share the link with my students. So students, you can uh, check out her TED Talk. But my question is regarding audience analysis.
Mhm.
So, how did you account for that? How did you account for the people that were present in the audience right there, and for the online audience, which is I'm guessing much diverse and spread out.
Can you repeat your question in a way that makes
Sure.
sense to idiots?
Okay, so you knew you had to deliver a presentation to a certain audience,
Right.
right? How did you how did you tailor your presentation so that it would seem relevant, interesting, and something of value to the people sitting in the audience?
Well, I really wanted to like start with something like very universal. So I started with kind of the worst feedback that I had ever gotten. I have this Glassdoor page for my company, Career Tuners, where people will leave reviews. And a colleague, a disgruntled colleague, left a very, very lengthy, very nasty assessment of who I am.
Mhm.
It was really challenging. Okay, it's kind of side note, but like I read pieces of the feedback out loud, and the line that I read was Fatima is the most difficult person you'll ever face. And it wasn't supposed to be funny. Like I was trying to open up about like, oh my God, someone said this about me. But like the audience started laughing, and I was like, actually, that's pretty funny. So like I had to not laugh, but I also like couldn't not acknowledge that. So it was like very challenging. But yeah, just opening with something very universal. Like all of us have gotten criticized. All of us have stayed up at night being like, "Oh my god, I was such an idiot for letting that happen." Or how dare that, bleep 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 and bleepity bleeper say that about me. We've all done that at night. Unless you're like a psychopath and you don't care about what people think, which I'm sure your students are not. But that's something so that's something so universal that I was like, okay, let me begin with this. It'll get their attention. They'll be like, okay, this is a woman I can relate to because I'm not a very relatable person, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm going back to school in my 30s. Most of my audience members were either students themselves, like traditional students, or they're the parents of such students. So it's not a very relatable journey, but I wanted to make it relatable that hey, this is something that you must have experienced as well. So I did that. I also got them involved physically. Like I had them do a little exercise to illustrate a point that I was trying to make in my speech. So I did that. I also made a lot of jokes, which no one laughed at. But then I was like really annoyed about that, and I asked my coach like, why didn't people laugh at my jokes? Is it because I'm not funny? And then he was like, oh no, it's just that your delivery was like too good. Like they didn't even know it was a joke. And I was like, it sounds like the kind of thing you'd say to someone who's not funny. I was funny, right, Michelle? Right? Right? Tell
You're
me.
definitely more funny in your head than you are.
I'm hilarious. I should literally be a stand-up comedian. I need to, you know what? New idea, change in career plans. Forget AI, forget this career coaching business. I'm gonna go for comedy. I got it. I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be amazing.
What's your plan B?
My plan B is to give lectures to your students, Hasham.
Yeah, good luck because it pays you literal peanuts. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. So okay, this is what I've gathered from whatever you've said so far. So in terms of audience analysis and incorporating the needs, the knowledge, and the requirements of your audience into your own speech, you were like, okay, I'm going to present to a bunch of students, university going students. I myself am going through the same journey. And
Mhm,
even though I am in my 30s, and this is a really weird situation that doesn't really happen normally, I can
mhm,
still be relatable. I can still tell them that it's okay to fail and to start a little bit later in life. So
mhm.
that's how you incorporated your audience's needs to your.
Yeah, and I talked about things that they might be experiencing, like bad grades.
Mm.
and getting rejected from their dream company if they were applying. I talked about things like getting rejection letters from, whatever master's program they might be interested in. And I kind of called out things like that because that's something that I've seen time and time again, where people will let that define their worth. And they'll be
Mm.
like, well, I got rejected from Harvard University. It must mean I'm not cutting edge and I'm not like top tier. No, it doesn't mean that. If you actually look at how people screen applications, how people screen resumes, how people look at admissions essays, the criteria that they look at are so self-serving and they vary from year to year. Like you might get rejected for being a male because they might need more females in whatever program they're trying to, it's not something that really you should let it undermine your self-worth kind of thing. So that's kind of what I was trying to talk about.
Shouldn't let it define you or the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks
okay,
for putting words in my mouth, Hasham.
sure. Just being an alpha male here. Um, okay,
That's
so
actually really funny.
no,
I
maybe I
think
should.
you should go into stand up and your joke should be, hey guys, I'm an alpha male. And the audience will be like, ah! And then that's it. Okay, please continue.
Some of my students are actually very scared of me. So yeah. Anyway,
Watch the
um,
TED Talk. Alpha males aren't supposed to be scary.
they're supposed to be terrifying. Yes. Okay, so let's get back to the TED Talk. Um, okay, how important do you think is a formal script or an outline for a TED Talk?
Oh, that's the other requirement they had, at least for the event that I was going to, where they like looked at it before it was part of the application process. Like they wanted to look at the speech and then they gave me feedback that, hey, this is too short. Like you need to add more to it. So I added more to it and then I ran it by them again. And then they're like, this is fine. Now record yourself. So I recorded myself talking to a webcam and then I read the script out loud without memorizing it. Like I just read the lines off my screen. And then they were like, okay, this is fine. So they don't let you deviate too much from it because they want to approve the content, obviously, because you're speaking at their organization, right?
Hmm.
What?
No, no, please carry on.
Okay, so they had me do that and then I memorized it because it's a very, very long speech. I think it ended up being like around 15 minutes. And um I had flashcards that kind of outlined each section of the speech, but then I
Mm.
also went in and memorized each phrase because I mean, this is just like how I learned. Like I just had to like each phrase would link to the next, so I did that. In the moment, like I did deviate from the script a little bit here
Right.
and there. Yeah.
So, my general input to my students is that having an outline is a good idea,
Hmm.
but having a script committed to memory and then reproducing that script on presentation day is not a great idea because it really messes up with your delivery. It um, it almost feels like you were reading the news and you're not really having a conversation with the audience, which you're supposed to have when you're giving an one-to-one or oral presentation in front of a audience. So so that's what I usually tell my students that.
Yeah, I just like just being like, in the public speaking arena for a while. Like I used to do speech and debate and I used to like I was really good at it. Like I competed in California state championships every year and like even there like they have very strict rules where you can't like this is the percentage you can deviate from your memorized script. Like so I just have been kind of raised in a world where they're
Mm.
like you're acting. You're not really speaking. You have a script and you're acting it out.
Mhm.
And I think we treated that as like two separate skills, having the charisma and the charm and making it look like, oh, this is off the cuff, versus actually retaining that information. So for me, I was able to kind of divorce those two things. Like even when I'm speaking and I like mess up my lines, I can keep it smooth and not be like and like kind of freeze and then deliver it monotonously. So that comes with a lot of practice. When I'm coaching my clients on giving like preparing them for interviews, I don't have them memorize things either, with the exception of like very universal things where even then it is mostly an outline. Like if someone, you know, is asked a question that like every interviewer will ask, and like it's something that your answer is going to stay the same regardless of who's asking and what company you're interviewing for, I'll be like, okay, this is something you can rectify. But for me, I just know that like I'm not going to have that confidence to finish within that specific time limit
Mhm.
if I don't memorize it exactly and then give it out. And then there was a lot of things I had to memorize, like the gestures and the, you know, the facial expression. So I'm not just memorizing the words, I'm also literally memorizing each and every body movement. So it's more like acting than it is giving a presentation. If I was giving a presentation, I would probably just like outline, like you said.
Yeah. So the thing is that usually when we have these presentations in class, we don't, it's not 18 minutes long. It's maximum goes to 5 to 7 minutes.
Right.
So, you know, again, for that amount of time, memorization isn't really a great idea. Uh, Plus, I would like to talk about a couple of other things that you mentioned
Mhm.
right now. One, practice and rehearsal. How
Mhm.
important are they, and how much practice and rehearsal did you do?
I did a lot. I actually have a colleague, Annie, well, Kurtul and Fessel is like her proper name, but we call her Annie. She she's really good at public speaking too. And I feel like because the story that I was telling was so personal and so based on real life events that I was so emotional about, I really needed a third person's perspective to be like, hey, you sound like an idiot. You sound like ChatGPT. Like, you know, like clean this up. You know, I needed that outsider's perspective because what I was doing is I was taking my trauma and packaging it and making it marketable. And
Hmm.
that's always like a really uncomfortable process. So I needed that third person's perspective who was going to be really critical and be like, yeah, you don't sound good. You sound like you were the person who was doing wrong. And you know, I needed that criticality. So I had her look at it, and then just having that with her, she kind of assumed the role of my coach with memorizing the talk. And she was like, hey, I need you to memorize it by this time. Like, don't make changes to the speech, then you're going to start forgetting things. And like she was really kind of on my case to do that, which I really appreciate because I needed that level of discipline. Overall, it took me like I want to say like 24 hours like over that week to memorize it, and it was like a very tough time for me because there was a whole bunch of other things going on. You
Hmm.
know, it was we did it on February 19th, and then I had my college applications due, you know, March 1st, so I had to like it was just an extremely stressful time. So there, yeah, I dropped my daughter off at my mom's house, and you know, I was memorizing there. And with each iteration of like memorization, I would find like, oh, this is hard for me to say off the cuff. Like the way I'm saying it, I'm not gonna be able to memorize it. So I was like continuously making changes to the speech, which drove Andy crazy because she was like, dude, stop making changes. Like you're gonna forget it. And then I heavily rewrote the speech the night before because on the day of the dress rehearsal, when the speech ended up being that long, they were like, we're not gonna be able to put it up on the TED YouTube channel. And that's really important to me. That was like a big business objective of mine. So I was like, so I had to like, I was like, okay, what jokes didn't they laugh at? Like, let's cut those out. Let's cut out all the anecdotes that didn't really add value. Let's cut, let's connect ideas more quickly. So it was like very, very, a lot of work. Yeah.
A lot of practice, a lot of rehearsal, a lot of redoing things
Yeah.
goes into delivering a good TED Talk. And how did you manage the time? How did you do that?
I don't know. People ask me that a lot. And I'm just like, I don't know, just do it.
Okay.
I went to school full time, I work full time, and I have a daughter, and I have a house to manage. And then on top of that, I do this extra stuff like, oh, आज colleges को apply करते हो, oh, आज TED talk देते हैं. And then people are like, how are you doing it? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, I don't watch any TV,
Hmm.
and I only look at social media like once in the morning. So like,
But how did you manage your time in the TED Talk?
oh, how did I manage my time in the TED Talk? You know, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, they had a big um like a like a countdown timer kind of thing on the floor that wasn't visible to the audience members or to the camera crew or to the camera, I should say. So I gave the speech several times in my hotel room, and I was like, okay, at this point I should be at the 10-minute mark, at this point I should be at the 15-minute mark. So it was really stressful, but like the day of, I was like kind of glancing at the timer from time to time to make sure that it aligned with what I had memorized. So in addition to memorizing the words, the gestures, the footwork, I was also memorizing that, hey, this needs to happen at the 12-minute mark or whatever. So that's how I managed doing that. And it was really helpful to have the dress rehearsal, because then I was like, okay, people aren't laughing at this. We can cut that. People didn't understand this. This is taking too much setup. So yeah.
Right, and here I would like my students to pay attention to this little detail that Fatma has mentioned in passing, is that she not only memorized her script and the content of her speech, but she even practiced and perfected the gestures, the body movement, the hand gestures, how she's going to move on stage, how is she going to maintain eye contact with the audience, how is she going to modulate her voice, her tone, how is she going to add pauses in between her, points
I
and
actually wrote that out, like, in the speech,
mm,
like, I, left justified all the content, like how we do traditionally, and then I would add little paragraphs to say, "At this point, look at the audience. At this point, sigh. At this point, chuckle, shrug your shoulders." You know, like, for each thing I had written out on the right align. This is right, yeah, right align, and then um like that was also going into it, like, take a step at this time, you know, for each transition I had to take a step so that the audience was aware that, you know, this is a transition, they can visually see that. So yeah, it's something that I picked up in speech and debate, like doing all that extra note taking, like, but it doesn't work out like that all the time, because, you know, like, you write it, you're sitting at your desk, you're like, okay, at this point I'm going to do this hand gesture, at this point I'm going to smile, and you envision it, but you're at your desk. When you actually get up and you're delivering it like you're on stage, and then actually being on that stage. And the other feedback that I got during dress rehearsal is they said, hey, you need to be like on that red dot. Like, if you deviate from that red dot too much, you're not going to get approved. Like, this is one of the requirements that they have, that you can only be here. And so I was like, well, I pace a lot, this is going to be a problem. So I had to rewrite that the night before, that, you know, kind of keep it to that. And that also made me really nervous, and I wish I had like a second dress rehearsal where I incorporated everything from that first bit of feedback, like cutting this out and staying in that circle and everything, but I didn't. So the day of, I was so nervous about getting everything done in time and not stepping off the circle. But that's kind of the reality of giving a speech. So physically kind of manifesting that stage and then thinking about that is, it really makes a big difference. So if you're giving a presentation for Hasham Sir's class, just ask him to like use the classroom to rehearse if you're nervous. At least that way you have that, okay, you know, this is where the desks are situated, this is where I can put my speech, this is where I can keep my props, this is where the, you know, board is in relation to how I'm standing, and it'll allow you to kind of rehearse that physical space as well. I think that's really important, you
right,
know.
right. Be mindful of your surroundings uh, and the
Thanks, Hasham,
limitations
for
that.
mansplaining that. That was really great.
Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
that for that derogatory remark. Um, okay, let's talk about visual aids. And I saw your TED talk, and you did use some visual aids. What was the thought process behind that? and what should my students do for their visual aids?
So I actually did not use visual aids at the level of any of my other speakers. Every single one of my other speakers made use of the giant screen that you saw behind me.
Hmm.
On my background, it just said the event of the theme, which was like resurgence or something.
Hmm.
Um, but the other speakers had like slides, they had videos that they were showcasing, sound bites, and I felt that because the story I was sharing was so personal, and because I mean, look at me. I was like, shows up here. Like, why are you guys looking at slides? Like, hello. So I was like, I want all the attention on me. And this was something that like I kind of also picked up in speech and debate, that props are distracting. They detract from your message, especially if you have slides. Like people are going to be reading your slides instead of paying attention to you. So even in like professional settings, when I'm giving presentations on like, hey, here's how your resume needs to be, I try to use like whiteboarding more than actually having like a projection of a resume more than anything, because then I feel like people are actually going to listen to me and not just be reading what's up on my slides. So in terms of the props that I used, I did pretend to be reading from a resume. Like I was just like, well, let's take a look at this resume, and I pulled it out of my pocket and then I pretended to look something up on my phone. So that was the extent of the props that I used.
Hmm.
I think that added a bit of authenticity because that was like part of the setup where I was like, "ये क्या लिखा है resume में? This is not good." You know, like I was trying to critique the resume, but there was like a plot twist when you find out like what was actually the creation process behind that resume.
Hmm. Um, okay, I slightly disagree with you on this because sometimes visual aids and pictures or other visual aids are actually very, 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 very helpful. So, for example, if I have very interesting statistic that I would like my audience to remember, I could project that up on the screen so that it's also sort of a memory aid, so they remember it. Or if there's a very powerful picture that really, really, really emphasizes the point I'm trying to make. Some people are very visual learners, so they might forget what I say to them, but they might remember that picture. And
Right. I think it
yes,
was just because of the nature of the talk was like so personal. It was just me telling my random life stories.
yeah,
My colleague Annie did kind of argue with me on this. She was like, "No, put the resume on the screen." And I was
hmm,
like, "The point isn't what's written on the resume. The point
yeah,
is the punchline, you know?" So we did have like we did not see eye to eye on this, and in the end I did what I wanted because it was my speech. But whenever I'm giving a technical presentation, so for example, I presented at the both the Southern California Conference of Undergraduate Research and the National Conference of Undergraduate Research.
mhm,
And there I used visual aids pretty heavily because I was talking about things like AI, and I knew my audience members were not going to be very technically proficient. I knew there would be like English teachers in the audience. I knew there would be students that were studying history and they wouldn't have the familiarity with, we hear these buzzwords, machine learning, data analytics, AI, but if you're not from that space, you're not going to understand how that actually relates to the research that I was doing. So for that, I did have visual aids. I was talking specifically about boosting the earning potentials of Pakistanis. So I juxtaposed screenshots of Pakistanis charging very little with similar profiles against profiles that were charging a lot in the Western world. So I did use that to illustrate. And I think that's what you have to do if the topic is totally novel to your audience or if it's really technical in nature. But because I was telling my own random stories, like I didn't feel the need to do that at all. You know what I mean? And I think you have to make that judgment call. I probably
yeah.
should have used to detract from what I was wearing, but it's
No,
fine.
no, I actually agree with you there because a resume is full of text, and if you project it on the big screen, people are going to try to read it, and then they're going to try to listen to you at the same time, and they're neither going to listen to you nor be able to read what's on the screen. So I
Yeah,
think
and
you
she
did the
she
right
said,
thing.
"You know what? Let's compromise. Show it line by line." And I was like,
Mm,
"No, what's important
mm,
here is like my facial expression, like my look of disgust and
mm,
confusion, because
mm,
that's what's happening when people look at these resumes, or they think that's happening when these
mm.
resumes are being looked at that are like non-traditional." So I was like, "That's the thing, right? It's not like who cares what's written on the resume."
Yeah, they should have projected your disgusting face on the screen. You
They
know,
should have, right?
you're reading,
The
you're
one that I
reading the
make when I
resume, and
see
then you're
you
like,
in the morning
and
at
then
6:30
yeah,
a.m.
yeah,
Yeah,
magnify it like 10 times. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Does, does you, sorry, I'm not gonna say that. That's really. Can I say it?
probably not. Probably not. If you are debating it, you can't say it.
Hold on, I'm gonna type it. I'm gonna text it to you on WhatsApp because I think they can see the chat. Hold on. Just open your phone real quick. I'm gonna ask you if I can say this. It's not
I
even
don't
a
have
good joke.
I don't have a
It's
lot of time to edit this, man. I'm gonna run this
okay.
as
Listen. I'm not gonna make you edit anything. Just can I say this? Can I say that?
yeah.
It's pretty tame, right? Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
saying.
it's very fine. Yeah, it's fine.
I was just saying that's the face that his mom made when he was born. Like, oh yeah, yep.
In
Low key.
psychology, in
Uh,
psychology, there's a thing called projection. So what
uh,
you think happened to
I
you
am
or how
projecting.
you
I
feel.
am projecting because when my daughter was born, I was like, ew. And then because it's so bad. Like they just want you to have like skin to skin contact. And I was like, can someone bathe this child first? Yeah, it was really gross. And then I didn't love her like when she was born. I was like, eh. And then they gave her a bath. I was like, Mira bacha, I love you so much. I'm gonna tell her that when she's a disgusting teenager. I'm gonna be like, I don't love you when you're gross, and just like traumatize her and give her emotional, psychological problems like that. I feel like that's a good way to parent, right? That's what we do as Daisies.
Um, yeah. So moving
Moving
on.
on. Like, I knew
Moving
you
on.
would say that. What? Yeah, moving on. What you got?
All right. So
Mm.
specifically, your TED Talk had an element of persuasion in it as well, where
Yeah.
you wanted to persuade your audience to, actually buy into your narrative. So, did you use those techniques of logos, ethos, pathos, Aristotelian concepts? Did you incorporate them in your speech somehow?
I think I used a lot of ethos for sure, especially with the intro where I'm like, okay, like this is something everyone's going through. Like you're not the only one. I used a lot of that. I used a lot of logos by using examples from, famous people that kind of underwent the same struggle. And then pathos, which one is pathos again?
Oh, pathos is emotional, appeal to emotion.
What is ethos?
Uh, it's credibility. When
Oh,
you
okay. So credibility, I definitely used a lot. Like, there's a whole paragraph in my speech where I talk about like my qualifications. And I think the fact that I was giving that anecdotal experience of like, hey, I've personally gone through this and I've come out okay. Like that was definitely pathos. Ethos definitely like those anecdotes of, you know, the thoughts that I was having and explaining to them that this is normal and stuff like that. And then logos would be historical examples, modern day examples, um, talking about things like the impact of the pandemic and the recession, the Great Recession, at least on the American economy and on the job market and how people recruit. So I definitely use that. And then even I don't know if the exercise that I had them do, like what that comes under, but that was definitely, I think, a big thing of persuasion where they were able to tangibly see the results of, doing what I asked them to do and seeing that change. So I think that would come under logos because they're
Mhm,
like seeing,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
So
So basically, you take facts you try and merge them somehow with
Mm-hmm.
something that you have experience with or something that you have faced or done personally, and then you somehow also try to incorporate your feelings or others feelings associated with that particular phenomena or thing that you are talking about.
Right. And in speaking, like they say that logos is not actually how we do decision making. Like as much as we tell ourselves like, oh my God, I'm like so objective and data oriented and I don't make any decisions based on like gut feeling or emotions, that's nonsense. Because like just looking at, how people do decision making, it is more based on pathos and ethos. So I did use a little bit of logos, but it was more pathos and ethos than anything. I think which one was emotion again? Pathos, right?
Pathos, yeah.
Yeah, so it was more pathos than anything else because that's the number one um like it actually moves people to action as opposed to the other things.
Also, I think it had again to do with the nature of your topic also because it was very personal and coming uh from your personal experiences.
Yeah, I guess I could have added more logos in there. Like it could have been like, well, here's like the data of,
Mm,
how many people change career paths every year. And here are like the economic benefits they experience by being in a higher paying field. And I could have done that.
mm,
Um, but I feel like that wasn't the point. The point was overcoming this emotional pain of, not having the self-worth to dream bigger. Like I I can't be like people who change career paths experience a 10% increase in income. People are going, okay, what am I gonna do with 10%? Like it's not it's not gonna move the needle, so to speak. But that pain of like insecurity and staying up at night, like that's cutting. And
mm.
if I could say, hey, I can make that go away, with my pathos and with my ethos, then I feel like that's a much more convincing argument.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, let's quickly now talk about openings and closings and how important they are and what did you do for them?
So for my opening, I use that like kind of universal anecdote of like, this is the thing that keeps me up at night. This is what I think about. And do you do that too? And everybody was like, yeah, and then, all of that. And in the end, I um I kind of put a twist on everything that I was saying. What my theme was career blemishes, right? Like these are the blemishes that we perceive that, oh, I'm a college dropout, oh, like I have ADHD, oh, I had a child when I was 17 in the case of Maya Angelou, or like I also use the example of Stephen King, who couldn't relate to the main character in his first book, so he was like, I'm a bad writer. Or John Kennedy Toole, who ended up taking his own life because he felt so dejected by rejections that he was getting from publishers. So I didn't say, like, I guess the expected ending was like, hey, ignore those, you're better than that. But I didn't do that. I kind of did a twist where, you're gonna have to watch the TED Talk to find out. So I think that was like, it was a way for me to call back to everything that I was saying, but the twist I think made it a little bit more memorable than if I just went for the expected, like, hey, you are more than your failures. You know what I mean?
Mhm, mhm. Okay. All right. Another thing I wanted to ask you is that because you are such an experienced public speaker and much better, I would say, than I am,
Oof,
um,
you're so sad
you
at it.
you must have experienced uninterested audiences.
Mm.
When you're presenting, people are playing on their phones, they're just yawning, they're sleeping, they're talking to other people, just not interested. What do you do? Have you faced that? How do you how
Yeah,
do you
I think any audience disengagement is your fault. Like, as I could be like gung ho about it and be like, it's okay, we live in an ADHD world where we're addicted to our phones. No, we're addicted to interesting information. We're addicted to things that move us emotionally. And if your audience is not paying attention to you, it's your fault.
Mm.
Your subject is boring. You're not making it interesting enough. You're not using enough vulnerability. You are not really getting your audience to relate to you. You sound like not a good person, or you just come across as so nervous that people just feel awkward and don't want to look at your face. Like, that's the reality of it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I have never had people not pay attention to me because, I mean, look at me. Hello. I'm
Yeah.
a showstopper, right?
There are probably some people who are using their phones or talking with each other or just sleeping right now. But okay.
Like,
Okay.
no, I think it is your fault. Like, what do you? Okay, fine. I guess there must be those like weird one-off situations where, like, oh, this person did a 16-hour neurosurgery before attending the lecture and they're like fell asleep because they're physically unable to stay awake. I don't know. There could be something like that, but
Yeah, most of these idiots did this, sit for 16 hours before the lecture. So yeah, that's why they're sleeping right now.
honestly,
Some of
y'all,
them did this also.
don't do
I'm
that stuff, you guys. You guys they're not even 25 yet, right?
yeah, I'm just joking.
Yeah, but
Nobody,
real talk, please don't do that stuff. Wait until you're 25 because your brain is in such a vulnerable plastic state. If you start messing with it now, like, it's just not going to be good. I say
yeah,
this
and
as a person with a lot of mental problems.
she knows what she's talking about. She's
No,
studying
I don't do drugs. I
primate.
don't.
She's studying primate anthropology, so she
I
knows how to.
only do the drugs that my shrink prescribes. No, seriously, don't do drugs, guys. And like in Pakistan, like, people be mixing all kinds of stuff in drugs. Like, people be putting cow dung in there. People be putting like, just don't. It's so unsafe. I'm begging you guys, don't do drugs. It's really dangerous. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you for giving them more ideas now. But
I'm gonna be smoking cow dung.
you can expect anything at this point.
No, I don't want to be like, oh my god, auntie aa gayi hai, mujhe batane. But seriously, guys, it's your brain is so precious. Like, don't mess with it. Seriously, just don't.
Yeah, no, their brains are not precious.
They are.
That's
This is
not an adjective I would use for those brains.
this is the future of our world, Hasham. What are you saying? You guys, no, don't do drugs and be smart and be good people. And you guys are amazing. Don't listen to Hasham. He's an idiot. Thank you.
Yeah, if you were as long as anyway.
I have met your students. I literally was there in February. I met a couple of them, and they're very lovely people and very well dressed. I was very impressed because in California we all look homeless.
Okay.
Continue.
Yeah. Okay. So right, we've talked about okay, let me tell you the situation my students are in. So at
Mhm,
the beginning of the semester, we assigned them a project where we asked them to go outside, identify or point out problems or issues that are relevant to you as a person, or
mm,
if they're institutional problems or if they are societal problems, and they
mhm,
have a significant element of communication attached to them. Like,
mhm,
you could talk about power imbalances, you could talk about taboos that we have in our society, but things can become better through more communication or better communication. So
mhm,
identify the issues, do some background research on it, and present your ideas in class that this is what I want to do, and then go out and engage with the actual parties or people
mhm,
who are affected by those issues,
mhm,
and try to see what is causing them, what are different perspectives, why can't people talk or communicate, or what are the barriers basically.
mhm,
Then try and design an awareness campaign or something of that sort that would raise awareness or give information or get people to talk or think about those problems, right?
mhm,
And do it both online and offline. And then finally, encapsulate all of your experiences at the end of the semester in a TED talk,
mhm,
and then tell us. uh, take us through your journey from beginning to end. Tell us
Mm,
what you did, why you did it, what what things did you uncover, what were the problems that you faced, how did you run your campaigns, what were the outcomes, and what do you think overall, if all this activity did anything for you or for the people involved in this situation.
mhm.
And the problem with this particular TED Talk is that we, of course, don't have the luxury of giving 18 minutes to each individual.
Right.
And they've been doing this project in pairs. So this means that they will also be presenting in pairs. The thing is that TED, the official TED network, they do allow people to present in pairs, but they don't really encourage that.
Mm.
So, what sort of tips or what sort of guidelines would you have for my students for their unique situation?
Have they already all kind of picked the problem that they're working on?
Oh yeah, yeah. They at this point they should be in a position to tell us or give deliver that TED talk or start
Okay.
developing that TED talk. Yeah.
So I would say, like, when it comes to talking about like social and economic problems, there is a saying that, one starving child is a story, two starving children are a statistic. So the point of that is that if you have a problem that you're trying to challenge, pick one person and use them as a case study in your TED Talk. So rather than being like, well, this is something that's impacting, 23% of the Pakistani population. You can do that. You definitely can do that. But don't make that the focus of your TED Talk. Like I said before, logos is important, but pathos is more critical in actually convincing people and moving them to action. So, whatever problem you're tackling, pick one person and tell their story. Like I have gotten a lot of negative feedback over my entire life. But when I started the TED Talk, I picked one example, I read the feedback, and I talked about how it made me feel. And that is more relatable than if I just went up on stage and I was like, doesn't it suck when people, criticize you? And do you guys remember the worst criticism you ever got? Like, it's not as moving as if I give people names and I'm like, this is Hasham and he's an underpaid teacher. And if we invested more in our teachers, Hasham would have the resources to do A, B, and C. And you're giving that person a face. And if you're using any visuals, having a photograph of that person can be really meaningful because
Hmm.
then the audience has a connection. You're not just talking about a faceless person. So that's definitely something I would recommend. And then after you establish that pathos, after pathos is emotion, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So after you establish that pathos, you've moved your audience enough with pathos, then you can move on to ethos and logos. So then you can say, what makes me a credible person to talk about this topic is that I've undertaken XYZ research, I've talked to XYZ number of people, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my ethos. And then logos is like, well, this is impacting this much percent of the population, and it would cost just this much money, but the return on this would be so significant. And then if you tie that back in with, why don't we help teachers like Hasham? Why don't we, Pakistan, his student, and then you can like name one of who's your like name your not least favorite, not most favorite, but the most average favorite student that you have.
Yeah, no, that's not a good
You guys
idea.
name what? Okay, let's
Not a
say he
good
has a
idea.
student named Fatemah Mirza, which he does. Hasham teaches me Urdu every week.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so
Give
so
them more ammunition, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he took pity on me for being such a burger. So he was like, so you could say like, well, why don't we give teachers like Hasham more funding so that he can help students like Fatima, and then have a picture of me, and then you kind of circle it back to that that pathos, which is the most critical component of the speech. Again, that's how I would structure it. If I only had like, what was it, like 5 to 7 minutes?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The most we can do is 7 minutes because we have very strict sort of time limitations. We cannot reschedule classes. It's a huge headache. And yeah, we have some institutional restrictions as well.
By institutional restrictions, do you mean the institution that you escaped from this morning?
I have successfully evaded the institution of marriage thus far,
You
and
guys, you guys should ask Hasham about when he first met me and like what he did. You guys should ask him about that.
I trolled her. I moonlight as a troll on the internet. Anyway,
No, not that, not that.
what?
KFC.
Oh, oh, that
And,
that
and
that
what your
was
what your
that.
hairstyle looked like that day. Mm. Mashallah, mashallah. You know when you give a potato peeler to like a 2-year-old? So beautiful.
Yeah, half of these people are internet stalkers, so giving them more information is a bad idea.
Please stalk Hasham. Please find out where he lives and then tell me the address. I have important business with his home address. Please, you guys Google me, find me, message me. Thank you.
अब जो messages आएंगे ना तुम्हारे inbox में, they'll, yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
you guys can message me, but I'm not gonna read them. Like, sorry, but my team is gonna read them, and if they can help, they'll help. But if they can't, then we're gonna ignore you.
right. Okay, so oh, since you're here, let me take advantage of this situation. And Fatma's also been participating in pitch competitions, and she's
Mhm.
actually won grants in one of these. Was it one or two?
I didn't. No. I won prizes. I didn't win a grant
Hmm.
yet.
Hmm.
We are
Hmm.
applying for grants. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so she's actually won prizes in pitch competitions. So tell us, because I'm also going to have them give elevator pitches. So so there are two types of elevator pitches that we're having them do. One is a product or a service pitch that they can give if they have any good ideas, or they can do a personal pitch. Do you have any tips on that? Why is that funny?
Well, the pitch competition. No, I'm going to tell you later. It's really inappropriate. The pitch competition that I won twice was a 30-second pitch competition. So that was like extremely challenging because 30 seconds is a very small amount of time. What made me win is that I did a lot of research on like what investors look for.
Mhm.
So for them, it's a lot about ethos. Like they want to see who they're investing with and what their credentials are and what their history of success is. So I just said like this is who I am, you know, this is how much revenue we're making, this is how long we've been around, this is how much web traffic we get. And I feel like that really made a difference because they're like, well, you already have an established platform to utilizing the funding to maximize your revenue channels further. So that really convinced them. So that's what I did because no one's gonna want to give you money if you don't have that credibility, right?
Mhm.
So I did that and that's how I won. 30 seconds was really short. So I just said that in like 7 seconds, and then the rest of it I used a little bit of ethos. I was like, you know, this is how much it's costing people right now. And with this solution that I'm ideating, it would be this much. And we could tap into a really massive market where people can't afford to pay this higher pricing. So they were like, okay, that makes sense. So it was like a little bit of logos, a little bit of pathos in the second part. But like I started with that ethos, with that credibility.
Right, right. So if I were to ask you to give us like one, two, three, what is the formula for it? So you would say that start with the
I
saying
actually
here.
have my notes for that somewhere. I can share that with you. But they wanted like if you have any revenue, if
Hmm.
you have an established market,
Hmm.
how and then they had things like if you've already gotten investing, you know, uh, what kind of bank relationships you have. So they had like a criteria.
Hmm.
And I think if I was giving like a pitch deck where you have like 20 minutes to talk about your product and, kind of give all those details, I would be able to be like, well, these are the bank relationships we have, and this is how much funding we have access to. And I can supplement this with personal funding and kind of go into that detail. But I was like, the whole point of that pitch competition is for you to get investors' attention so they can come talk to you after while you're having
Hmm.
cookies and coffee.
Hmm.
So I was like, look, man, I'm the only person here that has like this much revenue,
Hmm.
so don't waste your time talking to anybody else.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Great, 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 great. Okay. Also, the problem with my students is that not only are they very, very new to presentations or public speaking, but they're second language speakers. None of
Mm.
them speak English as their first language, which is not the case for you. Um, so, I mean, that adds just another level of difficulty for them. Um, so any tips or
Well,
ideas?
I'm like a lifelong language learner, and I feel like even if I don't know the language I'm speaking, I just blunder through. And the way I see it is like, look, if I'm gonna make a mistake, they're gonna laugh at me, and if they laugh at me, it's gonna be amazing because then we're gonna have like a memory to talk about. And the whole point of giving like a pitch, or like a speech is you have to be memorable. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So if you do that by making a blunder, like for example, I'm learning Malayalam, it's a South Indian language, and I was speaking Malayalam to my father-in-law, and then I was trying to tell him that I have a headache. So
Yeah,
I said, what did I say? I said, "എനിക്ക് തലയിൽ സുഖമില്ല." I said, my head doesn't have health. Like I have
yeah,
mental problems. so,
which you do.
so, so to this day, he's like, Sugamana, Talal, Sugamana, like, do you have health in your head? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, dude. So it's like, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? If you
Mhm.
overthink it, then it's gonna be a problem. But for me, if I had to give a speech in Malayalam, like I would definitely do my best to handwrite the whole thing, try to commit it to memory, and practice my pronunciation as much as possible.
Mm.
And that way I would have the confidence that like, look, if I'm gonna mess up, at least
Mm.
I can make it funny. Like I'm not gonna mess up because I didn't do the homework. You know what I mean? Like I would
Yeah,
have that confidence. So that confidence is really important to me, like knowing I've prepared enough. And that confidence makes me feel like, okay, I can just relax and give the speech. And I think if you don't have that vibe, like you sound really tense and anxious, it's not going to be good.
right, 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 right. And finally, some of my students are either not confident enough, or they think that whatever we're doing in this course is just not really worth learning or doing, and it's kind of irrelevant. A lot of them also cut corners and did shady things with their project. If you don't know what, if you think I don't know what you did, I do. Anyway, so what sort of tip would you have for people who just feel that they can't do it?
I just, like public speaking is so, so important. I have a very strong background in mathematics and engineering, and the subjects that I'm studying now are also very STEM heavy. But there's no amount of technical knowledge that is going to help you get further in life than having charm, charisma, being able to convince people and communicate well. If you have the opportunity to practice public speaking in a safe setting, then you should milk the heck out of it. You should utilize that opportunity as much as possible because you being able to speak well and communicate and convince people is the single most critical soft skill that's going to indicate that you're going to become a high paid leader in the future. So you can write all the computer science and engineering that you want, but if you can't articulate it then you're just going to be a loser who just codes for a living.
No, these fools are actually studying accounting and finance. So
Accounting and finance, that's even more important, because how are you going to get funding and how are you going to get your ideas across if, you're like, this is my financial model and these are what the numbers show? Nobody cares. People make decisions emotionally. People say, you know what, I like that guy, he seems trustworthy, I'm going to give all my funding to him. And that's even more like extreme in Pakistan, where people will just do decisions based on relationships, right? So you really have to be able to make friends, come across as really smart, come across as really knowledgeable, come across as someone who can convince people. And I have done so much schooling, so much schooling. My brain is a mess from all the ratta that I've done, but there's nothing more important in my educational journey that I have done than speech and debate. Hands down. My entire business, like the entirety of it, the success that I've experienced, is I can attribute it to one person and one person alone, and that is my debate coach. So if you have the opportunity to practice that in a safe setting, I would say you'd be a giant idiot to not take it.
right. On that note, thank you so much, Fatma, for
No problem.
giving us your time and doing this free. Uh,
For free?
uh,
Excuse me? My hourly rate, you are very familiar with it. I'm going to be sending you an invoice.
you know what? You can dock it from my hourly rate, which is much larger than yours.
Much larger than yours. How cute. Yeah, I get paid more than Hasham because I communicate better than him. What you gonna say to that?
I'm just gonna say American imperialism, and and let's end it at that.
I wasn't even born here. Calm down, okay? I grew up.
Do you
Huh?
have a Pakistani passport?
No, but I had an Indian one.
Do you have it right now?
Yes, I do. It's in Tawfiq's archives. I can go get it right
Is
now.
it expired?
It is expired.
Then I have successfully made my point here. It is American imperialism.
I'm gonna imperialize you so hard. I'm gonna just own you. You just wait until I stop the recording.
Okay.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please take English writing and speaking very seriously. Like I'm going to be honest with you. There was parts of my speech that I really struggled with articulating, and I was like, this is really uncomfortable to write about. I'm going to use ChatGPT. And I wrote those portions out in ChatGPT and I just stuck them into my speech. When Annie read my speech, she's like, this sounds retarded. Like, what is this? I was like, oh yeah, I use ChatGPT for this. And she's like, no, rewrite this. Here's what you should say. And then she asked me a few questions to help me articulate that experience better. And like, ChatGPT is a great tool. It can help you brainstorm. It can help you kind of refine your ideas. It can help you proofread. But the output that it's going to give you is not going to be memorable or engaging or interesting.
Yeah, I'd say it also helps you structure things a little bit, but the content of those things, it's not too good at it because it
I would
has.
argue the exact opposite. I would
Hmm,
say the content can be good, but the
hmm.
structure is really crap. And you can tell when something's been written in ChatGPT. Like, it has that, certainly, I would love to help you with that. And then it concludes with, in conclusion, you know what I mean? Like, it's so boring and it's lame, and it cannot give that human, like I've been saying, the key thing you guys need to work on is pathos, and ChatGPT cannot do that for you whatsoever. It cannot go out and make those connections that you're going to be using as case studies.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say because it has no access to context and it can't
Yeah.
really read the context or the situation at hand. Also, about organizing things is sometimes if your data is really scattered, I've noticed that it does a good job of sifting through it and sort of giving you a basic structure of what should be
No,
looking.
I still don't think I agree. I feel like the structure it gives, it really removes a lot of that nuance and the things that make that communication great and groundbreaking. things like jokes and like subtleties. And I don't know, I would not. I have used ChatGPT to write like a couple sentences here and there in my speech, and it was immediately noticeable and it detracted heavily from the quality. So you can use it for brainstorming, you can use it to gather statistics and data. However, do look that up further and do go into more detail. Like I've been saying, like, this is a safe space for you to mess up and, spend more time and do your best. Please take that opportunity and like really maximize it, and don't just do the bare minimum, because you're not going to learn enough and you're not going to be a good communicator, and people are going to take advantage of that for the rest of your life until you die old and alone, like Hasham.
I may be old, but not alone. Thank you, Fatma.
No
And
problem.
yeah, we always appreciate you doing this for me.
No
And
problem. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Bye.